told you, there's a snake in my boot. Whatever. That's what he said. Today, we're here yet again to discuss another book. This is another one by the previous author we recently reviewed, Geneva Rose. And the title of this book is You Shouldn't Have Come Here, right? And here's a little bit of the summary. Grace Evans, an overwhelmed New Yorker looking for a total escape from her busy life, books an Airbnb on a ranch in the middle of Wyoming. When she arrives at the idyllic getaway, she's pleased to find that the owner is a handsome man by the name of Calvin Wells, and he's eager to introduce her to his easygoing way of life. But there are things Grace discovers that she's not too pleased about: the lack of cell phone service, a missing woman, and a feeling that something isn't right with the ranch. Despite her uneasiness, the two bond and start to fall for one another. However, as her departure date nears, things change for the worse. What begins as a playful romance soon turns into a complicated web of lies. Grace grows wary of Calvin as his infatuations for her seem to have morphed into obsession. Calvin fears that Grace is hiding something from him, including her reasons for staying at his ranch to begin with. Vacation flames typically end in heartbreak, but for Grace and Calvin, it'll be far more destructive. Now, when I read that summary the first time, it was titillating. I said, "Oh, this is giving, Lifetime movie back in the day."
Yeah. I was
And
definitely getting that.
yeah, with a twist. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but we're going into full spoilers in this review. We'll try to keep it spoiler free for the first few minutes, but when we do delve into spoilers, we'll make it fully clear that we'll be talking about spoilers. But thoughts on the book?
Okay, so my initial thoughts as well were like, okay, this is gonna be like a almost what's the word? Like kind of American Gothic, like some weird rural town full of secrets, which it did give that. And there were like a lot of little shifty characters and moments where I was like, everybody's in on a not in on the joke because there was no joke, but like everybody's kind of in on something. And here's this newcomer visiting the town, and everybody's kind of like, you can tell everyone's kind of talking about it, right? Talking about her. Everybody's talking about this, visitor who's blonde and why is she vacationing here? Who comes to Wyoming on vacation? And things like that. I mean, personally, I have, been striving the past few years to see more of America, but
Okay.
personally, I probably wouldn't choose a ranch because I fear that as a Black person, I would not be welcomed. But this is like a blonde city gal, and they were just like, no thanks. What are you doing here? And there's something fishy about you.
Now,
But they were the ones giving fishy.
it definitely gave that everyone was kind of in on something. The way everyone was kind of like warning her, like kind of, not all the way, but somewhat telling her she needs to leave.
Yeah. Very that. I loved how kind of warm and welcoming Calvin was. I mean, you're already gonna get the sense that that is what it gives when you're at an Airbnb where the owner is also staying on
It's just
site.
weird. Why would you book that? This was my
That
question.
exists. It's a thing. And when it's like a rural Airbnb, you kind of want to have the person not far away in case like the hot water shuts off.
But as a single woman, Grace is out here alone, traveling solo. So you want to pick the Airbnb that has this grown man in there staying in the same spot as you? Ew, no. This seems dangerous.
So I think maybe she saw his picture on the website, or maybe, I mean, all of that, definitely all of that. But she probably also underestimated him a bit in that she's like a savvy, traveling, always travels solo city girl. And he's like this country guy. So she's assuming like he's a bumpkin and he's going to have that, not Southern hospitality because it's Wyoming, but also like he's just going to have this kind of charm to him because he wants to A, get that money, and B, she probably gets by off of pretty privilege as well. So
Yeah.
maybe she's just thinking that, he's going to be extra kind to her, and everywhere she goes, she's going to be greeted and met with kindness because it's a small town and people are just excited to have somebody there. Her visiting is good for the economy.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, blonde hair, blue eyes, bombshell. It comes to this country ranch. Yeah, she's definitely going to be, you would assume, well received. But there were so many odd instances that me as a reader made me think, why the hell is she staying after all of the events? And I wrote them down. So slight spoiler territory. If you don't want to know a couple of events that happened during the book, please turn off and join us back again when you've completed it. But there were several red flags that even with one of these, I would have left, right? As a single woman traveling, right? Let's see. We got no cell phone service or Wi-Fi.
Mm-mm.
Traveling
Mm-mm.
alone in a strange state with a random man. No cell phone
Yeah.
service or Wi-Fi. A shared space with the Airbnb host. We discussed it. I guess it's something that people do. Personally, I would not. I don't need you here, bro. Especially a grown man. Car suddenly stopped working, like the day she got there. Like what?
Yeah, that was a no for me.
Yeah, and also the animal carcass pit, just randomly at the ranch, falling into it.
Yeah, no. Yeah, well, so some of it you have to take yourself out because neither of us would go Airbnb. First, I will never Airbnb again personally, unless I'm traveling with a very large group of
Yes.
trusted Black individuals. But also, even if I did, I'm not going to go stay at a ranch, right? And
Uh-huh.
so, another piece I think is we know from horror movie experience that the Graces, Rebecca's, and Shelley's are quite naive.
Okay.
And they will ignore red flags until the end. And so, literally, the end.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um, so I'm just like, okay, like, yes, it makes sense for us
Uh-huh.
because we pay attention and we're on high alert automatically. But I don't know. For me, for her to be a solo traveler all the time, like, you would think, yes, she would have some wherewithal to be like, oh no, something is fishy here. And maybe she did from the beginning.
Not
And,
enough. Not enough for me. And I guess it was, Calvin and all his charm that convinced her otherwise. But there were several more, and it gets worse. We got the screams in the woods that she's
yeah.
and shortly after, the sheriff comes to question your Airbnb host as to where a missing woman is. If that ain't enough to get the hell out of Dodge.
For a while I was thinking she just really wants some off this guy. And in my mind, I'm just imagining, I mean, they weren't that descriptive of him.
Uh-huh.
But I'm just imagining, um, Liam Hemsworth shirtless. And I choose him because he's got that body hair, right? And I prefer
Wait,
the
Liam Hemsworth or Chris Hemsworth?
Chris is not really I mean, he's a handsome guy, but I lean toward more Liam. And
Okay.
so that's who I'm thinking. I don't see Chris on a ranch.
Okay. Okay.
I see Liam on a ranch.
Okay.
Open shirt,
He's
leather boots, leather belt, dad jeans.
Miley Cyrus adjacent. Is that why? Well, he's borrowing some of her country prestige.
Maybe. But I don't know. Chris, I just don't see Chris on a ranch. I see, well, it doesn't matter. I see Chris. I just, of the two, I feel Liam is the one. And also, he played a farmer guy in that one movie. What's the
Okay.
one with the
With
kids fighting to the death?
Miley, right?
No, with in Hunger Games, wasn't he farming
Oh,
in that?
oh, Gail.
Gale.
Yeah, I was
Yes.
very much Team Gail.
That's a country ass name too, though.
Yes.
Gale Furman.
This is a complete side, departure of what we're talking about. But were you Team
Sorry.
Gail or Team Peta? Team Gail? Team Peta.
Was I Team Gale?
I was Team Gail 100% since the beginning.
Well, who was the smug guy in part two? I was
Oh,
Team
I don't
him.
even remember that guy.
He had the weird teeth and he was super smug. And he was paired with the older lady when they went. I
I
was
know
Team
this
him. I didn't care for Peeta or Gale as a match for Katniss.
Katniss. Uh-huh.
To me, neither of them, they weren't man enough for her.
Wasn't enough for me.
Exactly.
Uh, but yeah, and by the time the sheriff shows up, I'm thinking, this is why would she stay? But from the beginning, like I want to say from early on, as soon as she gets to the ranch, it gave the vibe that she's on these vacations. She randomly picks a place with the purposes of trying to get smashed because she was definitely on a mission to get some B like from the get. I was like, girl, what's going on?
1000%.
Yes, with her most lacy, pajamas on. She was seducing this man from jump. And even her inner monologue was very I use and throw them away because I actually
Yeah.
noted something that she said. And she says it was a dance at the beginning of a relationship, intoxicating, addicting. You just couldn't get enough until you could. It was probably why I had so many. Sorry, so it's probably why I had so many of them. Every relationship seems every relationship loses its luster. You get bored of it because it's routine, mundane. You find yourself seeking excitement and spark elsewhere. So she's the use them and lose them kind of girl. She doesn't want to keep one man for long. It feels from her inner monologue.
Yeah. I get the feeling that she is, a working gal. She just don't have time for anything long term, especially not on a trip. And Calvin is the exact opposite. Like he sees her for the first time and he's like, oh, hopefully I can make her stay
Right.
forever. I'm just like, whoa. Whoa.
Right, slow it down.
Yeah. It's like he has never sniffed a cat before.
Oh,
Okay.
no. Besides, who.
Look, so can we just get into that really quickly?
Okay,
Because
sure.
so at some point we discover or we meet this neighbor girl who for some reason in my mind is what's her name?
Charlotte.
What's her Charlotte, but what's Hermione's name? What's the actress? That's who I pictured.
Really? Oh, okay.
I did. I know she was a brunette. She was described as a brunette. And she just kind of her attitude it aligned for me with kind of how Hermione is depicted, like very stern and very kind of like, but then the right person is very,
Okay,
you know what I mean? Like just soft and gentle. And, this neighbor, Charlotte, you very early on, it is giving crush, which is odd to me because y'all have both lived here all your lives.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously you're around each other very often.
You're dating his friend.
And then as we move through the book, you're dating his friend. Then we find out that they're on a break or they're broken up, whatever, one of the two. Right. And then it's just to me like she just gives so pick me, thirsty, and weirdly rude to his Airbnb guests. Like,
right.
Is he not supposed to make money because you want him? Like, girl, I'm gonna need you to slow it up and back down. Like, this is his income, and you're getting in the way of that, and you're making this guest feel so uncomfortable. Like, I don't know. I just really didn't like. Go ahead.
She the type to pay a man's bills if she like him. She's about to be paying. Yeah. Work, baby. much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And he pays her dust
Yeah.
the entire time.
Uh-huh.
Um, and you know, when it comes to the crux, when they have his birthday cookout,
Yeah.
and like the six town folk all come together
Right.
to celebrate Calvin's birthday, and Grace and Charlotte are head to head at this point, and I'm sick of Charlotte's shit at this point. So I'm just like ready for Grace to just give it to her full throttle, New York style. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And when they're alone in the kitchen, and Charlotte's like, "You, you're only gonna be here for 3 more days. I'm gonna be here for the rest of his life. I'll be here after you leave." And Grace is just like, "Okay, girl. Well, I already had him in the pasture, so sorry to
Right.
burst your bubble." And Charlotte's just like, "Oh," and just like so insulted at the fact that he's smashed. What did you think he was gonna do? And then at that point, it's already revealed to Grace that Charlotte and Calvin have hooked up at some point,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and not that long ago, like only a month ago. But
Yeah.
it's just like, girl, okay, and do I care? I'm never gonna see none of y'all again, and I'm gonna have this D memory
Uh-huh.
for
Fact.
the rest of my travels. I'm gonna remember the D in Wyoming I had. So, girl, what do you really want? And so Charlotte is just like, well, I bet you he didn't tell you. And it's just like, girl, I don't care. And then Charlotte, okay, so back to like the actual plot.
Uh-huh.
You know, there's been a lot of things that have slowly been revealed that have damaged the integrity that Calvin had kind of built up about himself to Grace.
Yeah.
And Grace is kind of like seeing past the mirage that he's built, and seeing that he is kind of sneaky and he will kind of lie or omit truths. And that he, while he is crushing on her, while they're getting cool and close and flirty and friendly and sexing, that he's got a side to him that is a little insidious, but
Uh-huh.
like hiding in plain sight
Yeah.
too. Um, and regardless of that, he's got pretty much all the women in the little town like falling all over him, not
Even
necessarily
the old lady.
romantically. I mean, not romantically necessarily, but just fawning over him,
Yeah.
picking with them, talking to him. Are you okay? Like, just very like
There's something about
shielded.
Calvin. The ladies can't get enough. The old ladies, the young ladies.
Yeah, it's very, very odd.
Mhm.
We talked about Grace and Charlotte headbutting each other at the cookout and prior. We also, I want to touch on the older lady who is the
Betty.
beekeeper on the farm, Betty.
Mhm.
She's kind of like a motherly figure, but she's also kind of rude to Grace. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, why are all y'all being so rude? Charlotte is alluding to something being fishy about Grace, very
Mhm.
specifically, is being like, don't trust her.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, where is that coming from and why? I just
It,
really don't understand. I mean, with the crush, okay, sure. But other than that, it's just like, could little 115-pound Grace in any way, shape, or form harm Calvin, a farmhand, at his own home on his own ranch? Like, girl, how?
it's
Why? I don't know.
wait, so we're getting into full spoilers now. So if you don't want to know the twist ending, please, click off and join us later. Again, we're going into full spoilers. There's a twist ending. I'll say it again. So click off and join us later. Don't forget to like the video on your way out. But um when we there's a couple things before we discover, or what before the twist ending happens. I'm interested to know who you thought would be the murderer, or who you thought was the person responsible for the many mischievous and weird things going on. For me, from jump, I thought it was Betty. I said Betty's old ass is suspicious. I thought that Charlotte was like a red herring, but the true culprit was Betty. And I'm interested to know who you thought it was, the brother or who.
So, oh, thank you. A random brother, like 5 hours into the book, he gets introduced. His name's Joe. He's a younger brother. He's troubled. You know, he has a drinking problem. He has a police arrest, jail, prison record, or whatever. You know, there's this incident that everyone knows about him, that everybody's just like, like
You were
walking
kind
on
of
eggshells
alluding
a
to
little bit.
it being like essay related, right? It kind of felt like,
Yeah, yeah. I felt very unsafe around Joe. I felt very uncomfy whenever he was in a scene.
yeah, uh-huh.
And so for a while, I thought, oh, you know what? Joe did something, Calvin covered it up with the help of other townsfolk,
Okay.
especially when Charlotte comes out and is like, I'm not keeping any more of your secrets, Calvin. I'm just like, girl, well,
Right.
you just might as well tell it now. Like, what secrets you got, girl? Let's hear them. You know what I mean? I don't know. It just, so Joe for me was, it was kind of giving Joe did the thing, everyone covered it up because
Okay.
they love Calvin. And you know, but personally speaking, whenever there's dead parents, I assume the children.
Okay.
I assume the offspring. So it was kind of a joint between Joe and Calvin a bit.
Okay. Okay. Because yeah, when Joe came around, I was thinking again, this was another instance of why would you stay after you're in the house and this man literally trying to burn it down? Why wouldn't you leave when the police showed up for the arson? I'm like, girl, you don't get the hell out of there. But yeah, like I said, I thought it was Betty. It was giving suspicious when she was at her boutique, and then like immediately after her car stopped working, and her just her her kind of like helicopter momming a bit over Calvin. I was like, this lady is a jealous woman. She wish she was about 30, 40 years younger so she can have Calvin for herself. That's what it was giving, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But we gotta get to the twist ending.
Well, twist ending. Yeah, you can get into it because look.
And before I say this, I want to know, because I went back and checked. This book is actually shorter than Home is Where the Bodies Are, but I swear to God, the pacing was
Oh,
worse. The pacing was
yeah,
worse, even though it did have like the short chapters, which is something that I appreciate. Like it makes you feel like, okay, I'm progressing. It's easier to go on and keep reading when you feel like the chapters are short. But there was something about the pace of this book that I did not enjoy. And maybe it was because they focused so heavily on the romance aspects of the book. And I feel like it could have used more suspense sprinkled throughout. Um, but when we do get to the ending and we find out that our girl Grace is not who she seems to be, she's actually Avery, a traveling serial killer. And she turns the tide on Calvin, who is also a serial killer, apparently. And I'm like, where did this come from? It was so left field. Not only was Calvin's shift into full like psychopath just so left field and out of nowhere. Um Avery's reveal, it just left my head spinning. I'm like, where was the breadcrumbs? Where were the clues? Literally, I even went back to read some of the chapters, and it was literally like nothing there to even like suspect anything from that. So
nothing.
I'm not a fan of the ending. Yeah, when she is revealed that she too is a serial killer, she picked this place purposefully for trying to. She wanted to kill him from the jump because it's
Yeah.
like an itch. They describe it as the itch she has to scratch every once in a while. She's a fully married woman with kids out in the city somewhere. But what did you think about the ending
Um. I,
and the pacing?
okay, let's start with the pacing. The pacing was so freaking slow, and I understand sense that they wanted to build the dread, and I can appreciate that. But with how quickly you were jolted with that reveal, it was just like the payoff was it didn't measure up to the build.
Yeah.
I think there were a few red herrings, which is always good. I think Geneva does that okay, pretty well from the last book to this one. I also think that Geneva has a problem with loose ends, and with this ending, there were a lot.
Okay, go ahead, tell us.
There were a lot. For instance, I you know, there was a scene with a random arbitrary uncle where he climbs into bed with Grace, drunk in a drunken stupor, which is explained away because he sometimes comes into the house once in a while to spend the night, and he be drinking, and he has issues, and so they talk. Grace and Uncle Albert, or whatever his name is, they talk the next day, and they're cool or whatever. But for me, he knows that house like the back of his hand. They've lived there all his life.
Yeah.
And his brother lived there all forever. And so the uncle seeing her do yoga or whatever, like a day prior or that same day, and then that night drunkenly climbing into her bed, snuggling up for her, it's like, no, that's not making sense to me. And I fear that while it was a red herring, to me, like, oh, they should have built upon that. Like, family murder thing between Calvin, Joe, and
he's the assaultant that they wanted us to believe Joe was in real life. Like, he's the one. He's probably got a couple essays under his belt. I wouldn't be surprised.
Absolutely. The way he was looking at Grace, talking about, oh, you're stretchy, or whatever he said, it was just like, wait a minute. And then climbing into bed and all that, the issue with the lock, the wrong way, like that was a blazing crimson flag. But it was just like, come on. The arson with the brother, and the brother saying, Joe saying, I was trying to protect you. It's just like, there has to be some meaning. Like, even with Albert's death, spoiler, with Albert's death, it was just like a throwaway death. Like, we have two unreliable narrators, Avery/Grace and Calvin, right? And we have a person who died who's allergic to bees, who was over by the bees. The explanation is that he wandered over there after hearing a woman screaming, the same woman that Grace/Avery heard earlier in the book, and wanting to explore that, and fell over there into the bees. Girl, what?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. I don't know.
No, I need more. Because how did he fall? I'm just confused. I mean, he's old, but it's just, no. Calvin, you shoved him into the bees. And that never quite gets, even with as smart as Avery is, that kind of is like a throwaway death. Although I think it was a kill. Right? Then the thing with the guest book.
Okay.
How the hell did Brianna's name disappear?
Right. That was never. Yeah, you're right. They never said how it didn't. Yeah.
Would he have erasable or would have been invisible ink for a pen? And why are you using a guest book at all, fool? The guest book is on Airbnb. You don't need to track manually.
You're right. In the basement, all creepy. Like, what is going on?
When does this guest book come out for people to sign? If he didn't think that anyone was ever gonna like find this evidence, why wasn't it signed when Grace/Avery came in the first place? Why you didn't put her name in it in the first place? Was it in there? I don't remember her saying she saw her own name.
I don't remember her name being in there. I think she stopped at the missing woman's name, so her name wasn't even in the book.
That was the last name, Brianna with the heart. Then It disappeared magically, but all the other names that she saw from the first night and from her memory were there. I guess he erased ink. And then what else? Um, Crazy Betty off her meds, hanging out in the field at midnight, talking about this house is haunted. Why are you allowed to drive? First of all, who gave you the keys? You shouldn't be allowed to drive, ma'am. You're not on your meds no more. Okay? You wandering over places at 1 a.m.
From where?
She needs a caretaker.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Charlotte never follows up on all the threats.
She punked.
Nothing. I think Charlotte knew
that
Charlotte had to know that he's keeping bitches locked up. Pardon me. He's keeping victimized women locked up in the shed. That also appeared in chapter 45 out of nowhere.
Right. That's my thing. Because, yeah, how did she not know when she was always just randomly popping up at the ranch, uninvited, just no announcement. And also, we already see that she's keeping one of the secrets, right? She's like, I'm going to reveal your secrets. So I wouldn't be putting past her to keep other secrets because she's just so enamored with this man. And also, one thing that I clocked about Grace, though, back when she was still being Grace, there was one chapter where she was talking about how Charlotte was trying to look like her. Oh, why would she wear the same outfit as me and similar makeup? I'm like, ain't you the same bitch that was at Betty's boutique trying to get the country girl out trying to look like Charlotte? Like, what's up? Who's really impersonating who? Grace?
Yeah, that was a little strange. That didn't seem like Charlotte to me, especially, I mean, we don't know enough about her, but it just felt like you've been talking trash about this girl the entire time. Like, for me, Charlotte knew. I wish that was written into the story somehow. Charlotte knew she wanted to be his special girl so that he wouldn't feel these urges anymore. Yeah. But that we never get that. We never get that anyone truly knew except maybe Joe.
Yeah, and him having the heads in his closet of the previous girls.
They stink.
Right. No one smelled that in the house. And what was the point of the animal pit? We still never, if there's cougars in the area where she survives a cougar attack, which is another reason why the hell would you stay? But if you know that there's cougars in the area, why are you keeping the animal pits full of animal carcasses? Is it to distract from the smell of the bodies? But
oh, yeah, maybe.
But she didn't smell a thing. She never made a comment about it smells a little stinky in here.
That's true. That's true. There was a lot. Before we have to, summarize and all that, I do want to mention there was one scene in this book.
Okay.
That truly, I'll say two. There were two scenes in this book that truly gave for me and that were a beautiful expression of Geneva's skill and ability. And yet everything else is just kind of thrown together and it's just disappointing. Yeah. The first overall, it ends up disappointing. The first scene that really gave for me was and it's way deep into the book, when it's the night before she's supposed to leave. And she has gone through all of this stuff. She went through the house fire with Joe. She went through the BS with Charlotte and Calvin, like accidentally uppercutting her. I don't know how he accidentally uppercut. He smacked her or something, smacked the taste out of her mouth. Yeah. But just like having this eerie, weird feeling, the thing with the door lock, all of that. She has a nightmare about Calvin being in her room.
Oh, yeah.
And the way that Geneva perfectly describes, I felt like for a second, it's a book, so you're thinking this is genuine, this is real, and you've already gotten the sense that by now in the chapter prior, the ending of the chapter prior, he's not going to let her leave. He's going to find some way to keep her here, even though he knows that she's going to be ready to go. The way that she paints this kind of it's not a vision, but kind of this nightmare that Grace / Avery has about him kind of tying her to the bed and like treating her kind of like a fish or cattle, and like kind of yoking her with something sharp, and just how it goes up, and barbed wire and all. The way that she describes that is so it's like, it's just so, it took my breath away. It was so beautifully written and so terrifying. Like it for me, that would have been a payoff. That would have been the payoff for all that buildup, all of that sense of dread I was getting, and just kind of this eerie feeling of some sick, twisted stuff about to go down.
Yeah.
It was just beautiful. I really loved that that chapter. And then the second piece was her coming back to the gas station on her way home.
Oh, yeah.
And the fear that I felt when he said Avery, and then we get introduced to her true identity, and he's saying that she dropped her license, which, although that was stupid to me, like, why you have your license on your person if you're going to be like trying to be on some fake, you know what I'm saying, like fake identity stuff and all that, whatever. I don't know, but how does it fall out? Hey, but the fear that I felt when he said Avery, and we find out she's Avery, and that she has a witness, and just all that, and then how succinctly we hear that she had to blow that gas station up and kill that witness. I love that. That was movie worthy, perfect, beautiful. Those two scenes really, for me, were, I think, is what she wrote the rest of the book around. And maybe that last scene with the family, but that, for me, that was a throwaway. I didn't care for that.
Okay. See, when we got to the scene when the gas station attendant identified her, like, hey, you forgot your license. I thought it was a good scene. Don't get me wrong. But I was thinking, this whole time she never looked for that goddamn license. She was at the bar kicking it with folks. Nobody tried to ID this woman. She had to go to the damn doctors. Nobody asked for ID from this woman, unless she has two, like, one for Grace and one for Avery. But if that's the case, why would you carry around your real ID if you got your little fake ID with you? I don't know, but the scene was well written, and I am a fan of Geneva Rose because of A Home Is Where the Bodies Are.
Yeah, that was excellent.
Yeah, excellent book, very addictive. But to rate this book, I don't feel, I believe this book came out before Home Is Where the Bodies Are. So there's definitely been some growth in her writing skills. She's a really good author. You can even see in this book, it wasn't my favorite, but there's definitely skill there. It's definitely better than a lot of books that I've read this year. But it wasn't my favorite, only because of the random twist ending. Even with twist endings, I feel like there should be some build up, some breadcrumbs, and there wasn't really that in this book.
Yeah.
In the pacing, like I said before, I wish there was more suspense and more thriller as opposed to romance novel with a couple little stuff sprinkled in at the end. But with that being said, I would recommend this book to someone else. It isn't like one of those books that you're like, DNF, or you're like, I barely got through it. I was still reading it with interest throughout the book, so I'm going to give it a thumbs up. And yeah, I still very much like this author, so much so that I started reading another book of hers. Yes, I
did. Was it The Perfect Marriage?
No, but that was it's on my wish. I started reading
okay.
One of Us is Dead, and it's like
okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like Real Housewives with a murder mystery.
Okay.
But as far as You Shouldn't Have Come Here, I'm still going to give it a thumbs up. Was it as good as Home Is Where the Bodies Are? No. Was it a horrible book that I would never read again? No, I still enjoyed it. So, but what do you think?
I think up until I will say up until the actual killing of Calvin, I was thinking, okay, thumbs up still, even though this is going really quickly, and there's a twist. It's a little bit predictable, but we're okay, because I really did enjoy the scene where he flips the script and he's just like, your car's not going to work, and then he says, you B, and grabs her by the ponytail and yanks her back to the house like a caveman. I really enjoyed that as well. But pretty much up until her
What?
him telling her where the router is. And, her telling him where the him telling her where the router is, her logging into Airbnb and being like, Grace is the best guest. Grace is the best guest I've ever had. I love her. 10 thumbs up. It was just like, okay, girl, it's getting a little crazy. I after that, and kind of how quickly the ending, and then I hated the family scene. It just was like, meh. That for that reason, I'm gonna have to give it a thumbs down, especially with the pacing.
Okay. Okay.
I was gooped during that nightmare. Okay.
Okay.
Like I was like, and then for it to be a nightmare, I was just like, girl, like, why you did that? Like, I know we're about to wrap, but I'm gonna say just real quick, my favorite whatever moment of this book was after Uncle Albert dies. And Betty the beekeeper comes over and she's like, you should have been watching over him. I'm just like, oh, you need to go home. You should have been taking care of him. You should have been looking after him. And Calvin has had it with her. He just found out the truth about his parents, and that they had their own stuff going on, and the way they died is not how they died or whatever. It's non-consequential, guys, so don't worry about that. Inconsequential. But he's like, you're the one with all the secrets. You're the one keeping the bees on this farm. Goddamn Secret Life of Bees up in here.
Burn.
The way that I died. You're on the secrets. Goddamn Secret Life of Bees. I was like, why would Calvin? He doesn't read. Why would Calvin know about this black-led movie? I don't know. But I really love this. I really. It's a book. He didn't read the book. We know he don't read. We know he didn't read the book. He didn't read none of the books in his own house.
Yeah.
I just love that moment. That was so like, hey y'all. Hey readers.
And also, before we wrap, because that was a hilarious line. Even the way the narrator delivered it, I was like, this is hilarious. But as far as the narration goes, because again, I read it on Audible, I didn't like the male narrator this book. I feel like he, from the beginning, why was his voice so sinister? Like, and he didn't even try to give him like a Wyoming twang. It was like this man from those wares in America just sounding evil and sinister from the beginning. I feel like his delivery could have been, his performance could have been better. But the girl, chef's kiss, she was giving people their accents. She was switching it up. So I just wanted to highlight that as well. But thank you all for watching our 40-minute review of this book.
Howdy ho.
Howdy ho. And if you like the video, please like the video and join us for our next book review. We're not sure quite yet what it is going to be, but I'll announce it on all of my socials and YouTubes and all of that. So yeah, thanks for watching. Goodbye.
Bye.